with today, we have my two passions here. We have an author who is writing about, the environmental topics that are going on around the world. So I combine my two passions. So I'm really excited to have an author here to talk about writing. My English class is here, and I see several students who I've had in my English class as well, who I always miss when I don't have them. But I'm going to introduce our next guest. She's going to speak for a little while, and then she's also going to have questions, and we might do a short video at the end. So it won't take the entire block. Just a reminder to have your headphones and your phones away. And so I want to introduce Charlene DAvanzo. She's the author of the oceanographer Maria Toscani Mysteries. And she is a marine ecologist and a retired ecology professor from Hampshire College. So I don't know if any of you are considering going to Hampshire, but she could also talk about that. She has received awards for her writing from Mystery Writers of America and Environmental Education from the Ecology Society of America. She's written several books, including Cold Blood, Hot Sea, and was a Forward Indies finalist for Demon Spirit, Demon Sea. I'm really pleased to, she's a Mainer. She's from Massachusetts, I believe, right? But she's living in Yarmouth, Maine now. So please, let's give a warm welcome to Charlene DAvanzo.
Thanks, Tanya. This is absolutely terrific to be here. I don't want to push this thing around. This is gorgeous high school for one thing. Wow. And it is a real honor for me to be here. Earth Day, Earth Week, as you'll see in a bit, is a little bit special for me. And it's also fun. It's really fun for me to do this and talk to you guys. So why and how a marine scientist, college professor, who never wrote a word of fiction, left her job that she really, really liked to write sci-fi kind of fiction. And let me tell you, if anybody said 10 years ago that I would be doing this, I would really say they were absolutely crazy. Scientists, we deal with data, right? Facts, truth, and I'm writing fiction, especially, these days, the days of fake news. It's a very odd thing to do, but I'm going to explain why and how this happened to me. If you want to contact me, if you want to ask about how to become an oceanographer, a marine biologist, or about Hampshire or whatever, there's my email, and really don't hesitate. I'm not teaching anymore, and I really miss students. Okay, so I've written 3 books so far: Cold Blood, Hot Sea, Demon Spirit, Devil Sea, Secrets Haunt the Lobster Sea. You can see there's a little bit of a theme going there. And then I'm working on one right now called Glacial Shattered Sea. It's about trafficking of little glass eels, which Mainers catch right now in rivers. I'll be reading from one of the books just a little bit later on. All right, so what I'll talk about, why and how this happened to me, and then I'll switch over to talk about why Earth is warming, and I'm going to be focusing on local impact. And then probably the most important part is how this story relates to you guys. Or if you care about climate change, some ideas about what you can do about it. You guys have a lot of power, a lot of influence. It's really, really important that you stand up and speak about this. So, 7 or so years ago, I was at Hampshire College, which is in western Massachusetts, Amherst, Massachusetts. I loved it. I loved my job. I got to do really cool things like grow tilapia in a greenhouse with students. I had absolutely no plan to leave. And then I went up the street to the University of Massachusetts. It's only a couple miles up the road from Hampshire. And I went to a talk, a science talk by this person. His name is Ray Bradley. And he works on ice cores to see about climate change. So he's looking at climate change in the past to try to have us help us understand what's going on now. And so what's in the graph there is some of his ice core data. This is carbon dioxide concentration here in parts per million, and that's the ice core data. But just take a look at Ray. Ray is a good guy. I don't know, maybe he looks like your grandfather or something. He's a really good guy. And so I expected Ray to talk about his ice core research. He didn't talk about that at all. Instead, he talked about being harassed by climate change deniers. So here's an example of a person that he went before in Congress, Senator from Oklahoma, James Inhofe. He's still a senator. And what happened is that, sitting before him and some others, that they were challenging his science. How do you know that? Isn't there uncertainty? I mean, what's truth here? Stuff like that. You can imagine what he said. And it was really a horrible experience for him. And so this is from a book that Ray wrote. The book is at the bottom, Global Warming and Political Intimidation, How Politicians Crack Down on Scientists as the Earth Heated Up. So this is what Ray said. Unable to address the bedrock science, the doubt-mongers chip away at the edges, focusing on minor issues, amplifying well-stated uncertainties. Science has lots of uncertainties, especially climate science, and most perniciously attacking the motivations and honesty of the scientists involved. Character assassination, destruction of careers and reputation are no obstacle to them in the pursuit of their main goal. Now about the character assassination of a scientist. If a scientist doesn't, if other scientists don't believe in you as a scientist, you've lost everything. Because those people are the people who decide whether or not you get grants. You write grant proposals, and that there are panels of scientists who decide this person gets a grant, that person doesn't. And if you don't get the money to do the research, especially for something like what Ray does, imagine how expensive it is to go down to Antarctica, on a big ship, the whole thing, doing the coring, then he's dead. So that's what he's talking about here. So I sat there in the auditorium and, I was thinking this. First off, how could I not know this? I didn't know anything about it. And then I said, people need to learn about this. The public needs to know about this. I need to do something. But I hadn't a clue what to do. So I went outside the auditorium. I mean, this is so vivid in my mind. I went outside the auditorium. It was getting dark. And this idea just came out of nowhere. And this is something maybe sounds crazy, but it may happen to you, it probably will happen to you, and then what I'm going to say is pay attention. What I thought is people love stories, including mysteries. I really love mysteries. I read them all the time. I could write a mystery featuring a climate change scientist who are being harassed by deniers. It was just a wild, crazy idea. But this idea took me over in the next few weeks. So I'm a sea kayaker, so this image means a lot to me. So the idea of me writing a book is like that, falling off a cliff, falling down a waterfall in a kayak, right? There were some positives. First off, I actually like to write. I've written a lot of scientific papers and grant proposals and understood the mechanics and the discipline of writing. Okay, so that's super important. Writing is rewriting. It's rewriting and rewriting and having comments and coming back. So there's a lot of discipline involved. There's a lot of time. You're standing, I'm standing alone in front of my computer, sitting down alone for hour after hour. That's what it is. I could use my experience as a marine ecologist and a sea kayaker in the book. That's pretty cool. I was in the business of explaining complicated science simply. I'd worked with, teaching students for a long time. I definitely was motivated, and I was passionate about the natural world. So those are all good things. Lots of negatives. Again, I've never written fiction in my life. I'd be starting from ground zero. I didn't even know anybody who wrote books like this. I hardly knew anybody who wrote books at all, or I don't think I did know anybody who wrote fiction. I had no colleagues, no friends, and then there are all these things I needed to know about. An agent, I needed to get an agent, I didn't even know what that was. Publishers, publicity, all this stuff just falls on your lap when you're an author, and a lot of it you have to do yourself. And besides that, the competition for books is intense. There's a billion books literally published a year. So I really like this thing because it worked for me. It's impossible, says pride. It's risky, says experience. It's pointless, said reason. But give it a try, answered my heart. And so it did. So within a month, within several months, I retired early from New Hampshire. I left Western Massachusetts. My husband and I bought a house here in Maine, and I set myself up to be writing. So the lesson for that, for you guys, is if you really want to try something new but are afraid, first off, honestly weigh your strengths, weaknesses, and options, right? If you're a guy and you're only 5'7" and you want to play basketball in some big deal college or university, that may not be a good option. Let family, friends, teachers, etc. help you. That was hugely important for me. I never could have done it without help from those people. And then again, pay attention to your heart. Your heart can tell you something very important. So, I write cli-fi, so-called climate fiction, like sci-fi, fi-fi. Here's an example of a few of them. There's lots of them. You can find them online, obviously, on Amazon or whatever. Odds Against Tomorrow and New York 2040. Those are both about New York City being underwater, with oceans rising. They take place in the future, and I don't tend to read those books so much. It's really science fiction, and I think a lot of them are overstated and are meant to scare people. But they're as long as you can try to figure out what's true or not, they're good. Barbara Kingsolver is an author who's living now. Many of you may know her. She's been nominated for a Pulitzer several times. Flight Behavior is a book I actually would recommend if you'd like to take a look at something present day. It's mainly about a woman named Della Robbia. She's living down in Arkansas, and all of a sudden this swarm, a huge number of monarch butterflies come out of nowhere, and then the rest goes on from there. It has to do with climate change. So I'd like to pause for a minute now, actually, and read from my first book. Now, what I want to show you here is how I incorporate, in this case, the idea about climate change deniers in the book, okay? So in this scene, Mara, she's the oceanographer, she's the protagonist. She's out at sea on an oceanographic research vessel. And she goes down below deck to look at some computers, check her email, and she's talking to another oceanographer named Peter. So those are just the two people in here in the scene. A half dozen computers ran along one side of the main deck lab. I slipped into one of the mismatched chairs and talked to my friend Peter, the youngest PhD on board, as he clicked away at the keyboard next to me. Hey Peter, how's Sarah? How are the twins? Focused on his computer, he furrowed his brow. Peter, what on earth is the matter? He held both sides of the monitor as if it might take off, and he turned toward me. Bizarre email here. Hold on while I read through it. I logged onto the NOAA weather site for the Gulf of Maine. A low-pressure system would bring squally weather faster than predicted. Winds 15 to 20 knots, swells 8 feet. My hand went to my stomach. Mara is an oceanographer who gets seasick. Got it. I skimmed through my emails. The subject line, climate change scientists fudge data, caught my eye. I leaned forward to read it. Email exchanges showed climate change scientists create their own heat by cooking the data. The researchers' words, transforming the data, removing outliers, prove what the Prospect Institute has long known. So-called global warming is a manufactured fiction. I turned to Peter. Are you reading scientists' fudge data? He swiveled his chair to face me. His dark eyes narrowed, black as a storm racing towards us. Yeah, and this one really might get us. But everybody knows that the Prospect Institute nuts claim smoking isn't a problem, there's no acid rain, and ozone isn't depleted. They're just not a credible source. Transforming data, removing outliers, that's just statistical lingo for data analysis. It doesn't mean we're fixing the numbers. Don't you see, Mara? They've hacked into our emails. They're quoting our very words. This is entirely different, and actually, that actually happened. Some scientists' emails were hacked into, and words like, just exactly these words, transforming data. I mean, it's what happens with statistics all the time. It's a statistical term. But you put that out, and people would think, well, they're making up the data. They're transforming, they're changing the data, right? I reread the message and stared at him speechless. Like an athlete's doping scandal, this could ruin a scientist's career in a heartbeat, and the harassment could be horrific. In Australia, climate change scientists had to move after radical deniers threatened their families, which is also based on something that happened. There's something else, Mara, Peter said. At the bottom of the email is a list of the 10 hack scientists. You are number 7. So what's going on here with the writing is what I'm trying to have readers do is relate to this phenomenon, the situation of hacking emails and all of that. And the reason why they would care about it is because they care about the characters. So that's one of the reasons why socially oriented fiction really works, is because when we read it, we care about what's happening to those people. We can relate to it, and then, therefore, we care about whatever it is that they're going through. Okay, so that's what I did, and the most important part is what you guys do. So you may be thinking, well, I'm not a tree hugger, I don't know enough, or who the hell would listen to me? But you're a person, and the thing is, this thing is impacting us right now. And like it or not, you folks are inheriting a global mess you didn't create, but it's a mess that you and your children will be dealing with for a long, long time. We'll be gone. Us old folks will be gone. You're going to be here, and you're going to be dealing with this, and it's going to be hitting us. I'm not trying to scare you. And it depends on where you are, what's going to happen. If you're in California, it's fires. If you're on the coast of Maine, which I'll be talking about in a minute, it's flooding. So it's going to come. All right, a couple things that you can do to fight climate change. You can talk about it. You can talk about it with your uncle who thinks it's a bunch of baloney, whatever. And you can learn about it. In order to talk about it intelligently, you're going to have to learn about it. So what to say and know? Big deal is that climate change isn't something coming in the future. It is happening right now, and it's happening right here. So what is happening? I'd like to concentrate just on a few things that relate to us here. And the first is flooding. So many inland areas in the U.S. are flooding more often. Heavy rainfall caused by climate change is well as human alteration of the land are main drivers. So what that means is it's raining more, it's raining heavier, and this human alteration of the land is people are living in places where they didn't used to. Maybe they're living closer to the water, and things like wetlands, they're filling them in. Wetlands used to absorb some of this water, and they're living on it. So that's what that means. So it's both of those things together. At the end, I'll show you some places you can look for more information. The Union of Concerned Scientists is one of them. So this just happened last month. This is in the Midwest. Breaches everywhere, flooding bursts, Midwest levees, and tough questions follow. You know, so we look at these pictures, you might see them on the news or whatever, and you think, oh, those poor people. And then, we go away. These are farmers whose whole lives have been destroyed. When that water goes down, there's mud everywhere, their animals are dead, their crops are, buried, whatever it is. This is a really big deal for them. And some of them will probably leave farming, so it's so easy to forget that. Hurricane Hartley, you guys may remember that, wasn't too far back, in Houston, Texas. Look at the flooding there. It was just an enormous amount of water. August through September 2017, over 4 days, many areas in this part of Texas got 40 inches of rain or more. 10 inches of rain a day, like a foot a day, after day after day. That's just a heck of a lot of water. It tied with Hurricane Katrina as the costliest hurricane on record, $125 billion. And it was clearly related to warming of the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico, plus sea level rise from melting glaciers. So you have warm water, more water in the air, and then that water comes down as rain. I remember watching the news and seeing it barreling up the coast. Wind of 130 miles an hour. I mean, you can't stand up in that kind of wind. Flooded hundreds of thousands of homes, displaced over 30,000 people. There were rescues of 17,000, over 100 people died. So hurricanes, what we know, warmer water gives more fuel for hurricanes, you have heavier rain, and then you have higher storm surge coming up onto the land. Coastal flooding here. Global warming has raised global sea level by about 8 inches since 1880. That's really a lot. And it's partly due to thermal expansion of the water and to melting glaciers. Storms are more frequent and they're more intense. And I mentioned this business about infrastructure and wetlands a second ago. So it's happening here. This is from our newspaper. This is in Portland. This is from the Portland Press Herald. So this man is from the Portland Department of Public Water Resources. He's walking along a flooded Portland pier. All of us have probably been in that area in Portland, and the water is like up to his knees. 24 inches of water, and it was because of rapid melting of snow. NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, has identified the Gulf of Maine as especially vulnerable to long-term impact of storm events. 144 islands, coastal communities along Maine's 3,000-mile coastline are small, isolated, dependent on fisheries. Storm damage is projected to increase dramatically, threatening Maine's working waterfront and communities. Some of you probably know fishermen. Some of you may be in fishermen families. Very big deal. Warming. Warming of the Gulf of Maine is really a shocking phenomenon. The Gulf of Maine Research Institute people, scientists here in Portland have discovered this. And this is the Gulf of Maine here. You can see Cape Cod down here is one, right here. Portland's up here someplace, Acadia's up there. And so you can see this is the Gulf of Maine. It's shallow water. This is the ocean. There's a shelf here. And what's happening is warm water is from the Gulf Stream is now kind of leaking over this, and then it gets trapped in this, it's an enclosure. And that's why it's warming so fast. Faster than pretty much any place like it in the world. And why is that important? Fishing and lobstering. I mean, the Gulf of Maine, since the 1600s, since Europeans have been here, it's a huge area for fishing. Cod used to come out of there that I'm not kidding, that tall. We've not done a very good job protecting them, and we've overfished them. But lobstering is still really strong, and it's huge. We have lobsters on our license plates. Lobstering is an enormous industry in this state for tourism and everything else. What's happening is that lobstering is moving north. It's moving to Canada. Now, it is not the case that the lobsters are actually walking north, right? It's that their larvae are not surviving in the Gulf of Maine, or won't be surviving in the Gulf of Maine. But they will be surviving north of there because it's getting warmer up there and better for them. Okay? So this looks like it's going to happen. This is a very big deal for the state and for all of these people. The lobstering communities, these are communities of people who have been in that industry, in that fishery, for generations after generations. If this goes away, it's going to destroy those communities. Okay, so why is this happening? A little bit of the science here. Carbon dioxide, CO2, is going up, and it's going up fast. This is a really famous in climate change world graph. It's called a Keeling curve, after a guy named Keeling. So what you have here is time, 2010, 1960, parts per million of carbon dioxide from 320 to 400. And what this is showing, this is from the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, and it's actually showing in the northern hemisphere Earth breathing, or photosynthesizing and respiring. So the CO2 goes down during the growing season because plants are using it in photosynthesis. Remember that? CO2 is used in photosynthesis to make plants. And then the reverse in the winter. But this is what is so interesting about this. It's just the carbon dioxide level just shot up, and that's a really short period of time. We're over 400 now. 400 parts per million is just a stunning amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The last time there was this much CO2 in the atmosphere, modern humans didn't exist, and -2 sharks prowled the ocean. Okay, so a little bit about the greenhouse effect, why this happens. CO2 plus nitrous oxide and methane are greenhouse gases, and that means that they hold in infrared radiation that would normally just go back out into the atmosphere. That's a good thing because we wouldn't be here otherwise. Earth would be too cold. But too much is the greenhouse effect, obviously called greenhouse because the greenhouses are warm inside because of the glass. And that's basically what it is. It's pretty straightforward. And where is the CO2 coming from? Most of it is coming from fossil fuels, oil, coal, gas. And that's because fossil fuels are fossil plants. And so this just shows a cartoon of how coal was made from ancient forests. Okay, I'm going to totally switch now to you guys. What can you do? All right, this is why I'm excited about Earth Week, Earth Day. This is what my generation did. This is what the hippies did. This is the New York Times, 1970. Millions joined Earth Day observances across the nation. We created Earth Day. We were really worried about what was happening. It wasn't climate change, it was pollution. And it was stuff like this. This is a river that is on fire. The Cuyahoga River, this is just like super, my generation knows all about this, and it's just shocking. It was once one of the most polluted rivers in the U.S. It caught fire 13 times, including this one in 1952, caused $13 million of damages to Cleveland area. So stuff like that and other, pesticides, lots of other pollution problems is what was driving us to march and make a heck of a lot of noise. And, the politicians actually started to pay attention. This is LBJ Johnson, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Cuyahoga River, leaning over and actually taking a look, and looks like he cares. Believe it or not, Richard Nixon doesn't have a very good reputation for obvious reasons, but he created the EPA in 1970. A lot of people don't know that. A Republican named Richard Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency, and that has been a phenomenally important tool. Covers pretty much all kinds of pollution. Okay, so you guys have amazing power in terms of climate, and there's some great models that I'll talk about. So you filed a constitutional lawsuit called Juliana versus the U.S. against the U.S. government in the U.S. District Court, District of Oregon in 2015. The complaint was that Americans have a constitutional right to a livable planet. Americans have a right by the Constitution to a livable planet. Just recently in March, powerful voices of support for Juliana versus the U.S. claimants in their landmark constitutional climate lawsuit filed a Friends of the Court brief in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on the West Coast. They urged the Ninth Circuit to allow this to go to trial. This is the young woman, Juliana. Look at her. And, it could be any of you. It could be a guy, it could be a girl, it could be any of you guys. She's just a regular person. It's like she just stepped up to the plate. She's now 23. She said that, I believe that climate change is the most pressing issue my generation will ever face. Indeed, that the world has ever faced. This is an environmental issue and also a human rights issue. I think that's one of the reasons why they got so far, or getting so far. Human rights issue. She was engaged in climate activism since she was 10. At 15, she co-filed a lawsuit against the Oregon governor, saying that they needed a climate emissions reduction plan in the state in accord with the Paris Agreement. And then she co-filed this lawsuit. She's now an undergrad at the University of Oregon. Okay, I'm going to end with Greta. Many of you may know her. Swedish girl, Swedish schoolgirl, she's a climate activist. She initiated the school strikes and climate movement. She sat outside the Swedish legislature during school hours for a week on end. She wanted the Swedish government to reduce carbon emissions. She said she was inspired to do this by the Parkland Soldier March for Our Lives, which I'm sure you guys know all about. She's pretty, she's just quite an amazing person. And we're going to hear a little clip. You'll get to hear her voice. She looks like a pretty serious young lady, and I guess she is. Here she is at the World Economic Forum. she spoke, she's up there with everybody else. And she spoke to these people in the World Economic Forum. You know, these are politicians and big deal, whatever. And in 2019, she spoke at Davos at the World Economic Forum. Our house is on fire. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. We owe it to the young people to give them hope. In 2018, Time magazine named her one of the world's 25 most influential teenagers of 2018. She was proclaimed Sweden's most important woman in 2019. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is art, climate art. Some of you are artists. That's what you're really interested in. You're maybe not interested in the science. So art is very powerful. I really like this. I've actually seen this. This is a real thing. This is Venice. See the water there, you know, gondolas. And Venice, as you can imagine, is in big trouble. Venice, you know, there's water all around Venice. That water is rising. All of these, you know, incredible paintings and everything inside. Lots of people, of course, live there too. Venice is in big trouble, and these hands coming out of the water to literally hold up the superstructure of that building. I don't know. To me, that is just a really powerful bit of art. It has gotten a lot of traction. And I think this is the last slide here. So just some examples of climate art. You know, you can see, I don't believe in global warming is drowning. I'm sure a lot of you could come up with some pretty neat stuff. You know, maybe that's something that you'd like to work on in whatever class, you know, or just on your own. So the last slide is just some information about climate change. You can take a quick look at this. I think they're good sources, but you can obviously find your own. And that's it.
Show a short video and let you all go. So does anybody have any questions, either about her writing or about the work that she's done? I also, Mr. Haynes.
So from your time as a teacher, what were some of the most effective ways that you found to inspire young people to take action?
Take action. I mean, that's a really good question. When I was a teacher, I didn't really work on activism that much. I taught, one of the most important things was to involve students actively in class. So to work on research projects, you know, that kind of thing. But back then, again, I wasn't really into the activism part. I was much more the science part. And so I wish, looking back, that I had, but many of the students were involved in that, and I would go to marches or something with them, but I wasn't helping them initiate it, and I wish I had. I don't know, do you have ideas yourself about how these guys could?
Well, I certainly think the art piece that you just referenced, I think art needs to be integrated throughout the curriculum, and I think that that's probably one of the more compelling ways. We did a unit at the beginning of the year on marine plastics, and students made prints of different organisms that were impacted by marine plastics.
Yeah.
And now those are on display in our hallway.
That's great.
So that was one way, but it seems just like the tip of the iceberg. There's got to be more.
There's some local organizations, and one I would recommend for sure is 350.org.
Yeah.
350.org.
Yeah, one thing, if you're interested in activism or anything that she's been talking about, there's a meeting after school today. We have organized a bus to go to Augusta on April 23rd, the day after Earth Day, so when we come back from vacation. It's a Monday. The Tuesday, Ms. Flynn and I are going to take some students up there, and the point of it is to get youth voices up at the Augusta State House, and you can meet with legislators, You can see what kind of bills are up in front of legislators today. And it doesn't necessarily only have to be about climate change. I mean, I'm really passionate also about the fact that we just have so much plastic in our oceans. And so, it would be great if we had some federal legislation or state legislation around that. And we really don't. We don't have anything like that. So if you're interested in that, come see me, or we're going to have a meeting after school today, or you can just email me. So, does anybody else have any questions about anything? All right, well, this is about 10 minutes, and so when it's over, then you can head on back to your classrooms with your teachers, okay? And I appreciate your attention and your time. I'd say 80% of you are engaged here. And then if you can just recycle your stuff on the way out, please, as well. So if somebody could, in the back, get the lights, if you press number 6 on the lights, that would be great.
When I was about 8 years old, I first heard about something called climate change or global warming. Apparently that was something humans had created by our way of living. I was told to turn off the lights to save energy and to recycle paper to save resources. I remember thinking that it was very strange that humans, who are an animal species among others, could be capable of changing the Earth's climate. Because if we were, and if it was really happening, we wouldn't be talking about anything else. As soon as you turn on the TV, everything would be about that. Headlines, radio, newspapers. You would never read or hear about anything else, as if there was a world war going on. But no one ever talked about it. If burning fossil fuels was so bad that it threatened our very existence, how could we just continue like before? Why were there no restrictions? Why wasn't it made illegal? To me, that did not add up. It was too unreal. So when I was 11, I became ill. I fell into depression. I stopped talking and I stopped eating. In 2 months, I lost about 10 kilos of weight. Later on, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, OCD, and selective mutism. That basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary. And that was one of those moments. For those of us who are on the spectrum, almost everything is black or white. We aren't very good at lying, and we usually don't enjoy participating in the social game that the rest of you seem so fond of. I think in many ways that we autistic are the normal ones, and the rest of the people are pretty strange. Especially when it comes to the sustainability crisis, where everyone keeps saying that climate change is an existential threat and the most important issue of all. And yet they just carry on like before. I don't understand that, because if the emissions have to stop, then we must stop the emissions. To me, that is black or white. There are no grey areas when it comes to survival. Either we go on as a civilization or we don't. We have to change. Rich countries like Sweden need to start reducing emissions by at least 15% every year. And that is so that we can stay below a 2-degree warming target. Yet, as the IPCC have recently demonstrated, aiming instead for 1.5 degrees Celsius would significantly reduce the climate impacts. But we can only imagine what that means for reducing emissions. You would think the media and every one of our leaders would be talking about nothing else, but they never even mention it. Nor does anyone ever mention the greenhouse gases already locked in the system, nor that air pollution is hiding a warming, so that when we stop burning fossil fuels, we already have an extra level of warming, perhaps as high as 0.5 to 1.1 degrees Celsius. Furthermore, does hardly anyone speak about the fact that we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, with up to 200 species going extinct every single day. That the extinction rate is today between 1,000 and 10,000 times higher than what is seen as normal. Nor does hardly anyone ever speak about the aspect of equity or climate justice, clearly stated everywhere in the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely necessary to make it work on a global scale. That means that rich countries need to get down to 0 emissions within 6 to 12 years with today's emission speed. And that is so that people in poorer countries can have a chance to heighten their standard of living by building some of the infrastructure that we have already built, such as roads, schools, hospitals, clean drinking water, electricity, and so on. Because how can we expect countries like India or Nigeria to care about the climate crisis if we, who already have everything, don't care even a second about it or our actual commitments to the Paris Agreement? So, why are we not reducing our emissions? Why are they in fact still increasing? Are we knowingly causing a mass extinction? Are we evil? No, of course not. People keep doing what they do because the vast majority doesn't have a clue about the actual consequences of our everyday life. And they don't know the rapid changes required. We will think we know, and we will think everybody knows, but we don't. Because how could we? If there really was a crisis, and if this crisis was caused by our emissions, you would at least see some signs. Not just flooded cities, tens of thousands of dead people, and whole nations leveled to piles of torn down buildings. You would see some restrictions, but no. And no one talks about it. There are no emergency meetings, no headlines, no breaking news. No one is acting as if we were in a crisis. Even most climate scientists or green politicians keep on flying around the world, eating meat and dairy. If I live to be 100, I will be alive in the year 2103. When you think about the future today, you don't think beyond the year 2050. By then, I will, in the best case, not even have lived half of my life. What happens next? The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children or grandchildren, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you, the people who were around back in 2018. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything, while there still was time to act. What we do or don't do right now will affect my entire life and the lives of my children and grandchildren. What we do or don't do right now, me and my generation can't undo in the future. So when school started in August this year, I decided that this was enough. I sat myself down on the ground outside the Swedish Parliament. I school striked for the climate. Some people say that I should be in school instead. Some people say that I should study to become a climate scientist so that I can solve the climate crisis. But the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. All we have to do is to wake up and change. And why should I be studying for a future that soon will be no more? when no one is doing anything whatsoever to save that future? And what is the point of learning facts within the school system when the most important facts given by the finer science of that same school system clearly means nothing to our politicians and our society? Some people say that Sweden is just a small country and that it doesn't matter what we do. But I think that if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school for a few weeks, imagine what we could all do together if we wanted to. Now we're almost at the end of my talk. And this is where people usually start talking about hope. Solar panels, wind power, circular economy, and so on. But I'm not going to do that. We've had 30 years of pep talking and selling positive ideas. And I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. Because if it would have, the emissions would have gone down by now. They haven't. And yes, we do need hope. Of course we do. But the one thing we need more than hope is action. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then, and only then, hope will come. Today, we use 100 million barrels of oil every single day. There are no politics to change that. There are no rules to keep that oil in the ground. So we can't save the world by playing by the rules. Because the rules have to be changed. Everything needs to change. And it has to start today. Thank you.
All right, before you get up, can somebody put number 4, I think, turns them on. All right, so can we, before we leave, can we just have a round of applause for our guests? There's a lot of people in here, so just be careful when you head out, and make sure you get rid of your belongings. And thank you all for coming.